kind of like, owning a house or buying one and renting it for other people. It's like, well, have you really found a mountain house or a lake house or a beach house that you love so much that you don't want to try any other places? And I haven't gotten to that point yet where I want to say like, this is the mountain house, this is the lake house, this is the beach house. I still like to rent, to travel. And for me, home is that platform or that, that transportation station, if you will, to go see the world.
So home is a place you're coming from.
Home is a place I'm coming from.
And then you can see the rest of the world from there.
Correct. Well said.
This podcast is about real estate with intelligence. It is pulling the sword from the stone. This podcast is about that unique balance in real estate, that balance between technological intelligence and our emotional intelligence and the transactions and interactions with one another in the real estate process. That's why we're inviting expert guests, people who are knowledgeable and bring different perspective. Join me in exploring this fascination, the look behind the scenes of technological advancement and how it's interacting with people's decisions in real estate. Andrew, this is awesome. Welcome to Real Estate with Intelligence podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Friend, you're somebody who is a serial entrepreneur, someone who I look up to and look at aspirationally in aspects of business and in how you hold yourself as a human being and also as a real estate professional. Tell us a little bit about you, the brands you represent, and where you're going with it.
Tommy, it's awesome to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And this late in the day, I know your brain's probably been, supercharged. So I'm going to make sure I match that energy to the best of my ability. As of late, I am currently owning and operating 8 businesses that are synergistic in real estate. So my real estate consortium, Karsten's Capital Partners, which is private lending and development across the country with a focus in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Nashville, Tennessee, MSA, and South Florida. REMAX Distinctive, which is my brokerage, which is part of the REMAX franchise. And we have offices in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and I'm also licensed in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, where we also conduct business for some of our corporate clients, both foreclosures for mortgage and financial institutions to also corporate relocation for a lot of businesses relocating their employees inside and out of the area. Distinctive property management, which thanks to you, Tommy, we've been partners now for a little over 3 years, I believe. It's going swimmingly. I like that word. And so distinctive property management still serving Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Distinctive Title, which does real estate settlement transactions in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Had that business for about 6 years and is going great. And Loud and Stay, which is short-term property management. It's a supercharged Airbnb, white glove concierge. I like to say that both when people come to a Loud and Stay home, usually these homes are set in some, enchanted and ethereal type of, acreage with, lots of natural landscapes and beauty. The comfort of when you walk in, all the linens are very high quality. Everything is with high intention and laid out. So when you come in for a stay, you feel like, you're not only at home, but also with the white glove of a concierge or a hotel. And have some MRI facilities across the country, which are doing very well. Been a part owner of that company for about 6 years now as well. That company does MRI scans. So we have facilities in Las Vegas, Henderson, Denver, Colorado, Louisville, Kentucky, Fort Wayne, Indiana, mostly doing CT scans and newly operating full body scans and MRIs, and they're open-sided. So I went out there one time to do one because I was like, well, I own an MRI company now. I should probably test out the equipment and see how it goes.
Did you test it out under injury and duress, or did you test it out totally healthy?
Well, admittedly, my brain is always working constantly. So I like to think that's a good thing. Sometimes people are curious whether that is or not. So I was like, well, we'll just go get a preemptive brain scan to make sure that, that's just the way I'm built. So I went there to do that, and it's open sided. So it's not the closed tube where, claustrophobia would kick in. But it's also good. So whenever you get in the machine, you can look left, you can look right, you can see, outside both sides, which is also good for patients that either are claustrophobic or they're obese or they just don't want to be in the tube. So that's what we have those for. And that company's been growing, 100% year over year for the last 5 years, which is just excellent. I feel bad, that I said 8 companies, and here, some of my business partners might be like, yeah, I still haven't been named yet. But we have, and also government contracting, First Resource Consulting, where we do a lot of foreclosure consultations for local listing realtors around the country to help them, one, procure different government contracts so they can be the listing broker for those. A lot of that has to do with HUD counseling, and a lot of the defaulted FHA portfolio, but we've been doing that since 2013. And we have about 60 clients across the country. We've been doing that for a while. That business was obliterated by the foreclosure moratoriums after COVID, which, for better or for worse, that's just how it's been. But I, will say I have a bit of a forecast on foreclosures as of late, and just a spoiler alert, 2024, there will be an uptick that's more commensurate with 2016, 2017 inventory levels. But
I think it's fascinating. Like we're talking about real estate with intelligence, and I'm just trying to keep track of all these things. You also have your broker's license in five states, right?
Yeah.
And you got Delaware, West Virginia, Maryland,
not
DC.
Delaware. So West Virginia, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania.
Not Delaware yet.
I tell you what, there's been at least 7 agents that have asked me recently if I would get licensed in Delaware, and it makes sense because it's actually we do business all the way up into the tips of kind of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, but there is liability and focus and intention that goes on to every state, and I was spreading myself a little thin, so I just said we're going to hold off for a bit on Delaware.
So, in terms of that's a lot. And you're trying to keep all these things straight, and yet you're really clear on articulating this is where this business does business, this is what we do for that, and all these different things. I talk about, everybody uses this term AI, artificial intelligence. I like to flip it around and call it IA, which is the intelligence of articulation. That was an awesome demonstration. If you were to articulate something about the use of technology to support you in all of your myriad of businesses, where would you say technology helps you the most? And where would you say, it doesn't matter how good this technology is going to be, it's never going to replace good humans in the job?
I won't answer that directly right off the bat. But first, the way I can do all this is because the people that I have, both as partners or as leadership or management team, or even employees and staff, they're fantastic, and many of them have been with me for the whole ride. So one, that's more the testament too of, hey, this is the team that got us here. But now with technology and different tech stacks or softwares, or even the artificial intelligence that's coming in, it's a real question to have. It's a real, I wouldn't say a problem, or the team is not used to it. And so I've really been taking the approach of, well, hey, it's not coming, it's here. And so we've just gone back through and said, before we look at our staffing plan and maybe we're surging, or maybe like the other company, where the moratoriums shut down that business or really slowed it down, all that change has been an opportunity to recalibrate, both the operational efficiencies in our staff, with our consultants, our vendor management agreements, the technology that we have, to where when you're operating everything smooth, you don't usually think about it. So now looking at, before I even go to AI, it's like, let's just go back to our current technology providers, our current software for a service, and use the downtime not to, lay people off. But, since I do value those people and they're great, I can't, always create business when the interest rates are up to 8 and 9 and things have slowed down. That team is so hard to find. So then we just really look back. All right, let's look at the technologies we've been using. Let's see if we can find some different efficiencies, a way to do this better, free up more of your time. So the next time the next wave starts to come around, we're better suited. We have a greater quality of life. We have less staff. We have more incentive structures for career growth, for bonuses with that team. So, for me, and I think this goes to, when as AI continues to play more of a prevalent role, what I always see is that human connection is going to continue to be more and more important. Now, it's not going to be talked about. It's almost going to be taboo because no one wants to talk about the woo-woo mushy, human connection components. But when everybody is, losing their mind with anxiety and that, they immediately go to their robot to basically help calm them or something like that. What they're really missing is that human connection and being able just to express whatever they need and be candid with their needs to an actual person. So I'm playing the role right now of investigating the current technologies that we have, also investigating all that AI has to offer, and not try to get ahead of it, but just use it because it's changing so fast, and getting my team comfortable with, we are going to be curious about this and we are going to welcome it and let it in here because it's going to come in here regardless. And I think, though I know there is room for both, I'm going to call it the robot, the robot and the human, and both of them are wildly important. And I think that, as a human, I'm always going to, vote for the humans. I'm always going to be pro-human.
I'm glad I have your vote.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if the robot and Tommy can do it the same, there's still room for both. I have to figure out how. But
sometimes I get these images of like Paul Bunyan versus the chainsaw, or some of these the locomotive versus the horse, and like there are advantages and disadvantages, or pros and cons to either or. Depends on the system and what you need it for, and what is the vehicle, or what is the intention of what's the outcome we're all intending to do, and to use those tools accordingly. With the human aspect, you talk about the good human aspect, and I'm sure with all of your myriad of real estate companies and experience, what issues do you see that you're like, there is just no way? Like you talked about giving a hug, like there's no way that robot's gonna be able to give a hug quite like another person. What other kinds of things like that do you see in the future where you're like, man, this tech is great. However, like I need humans for this aspect of the real estate.
I always go back to, I think it was Bill Gates who said, there's 13 things a realtor can do well, and pretty soon I can automate 10 of them. So then you focus on maybe the 3 that they can't right now, such as, smell-o-vision. And as a property manager, someone buys a house sight unseen, and then they get in the house and they're like, what is that? Is it gas, which is life-threatening? Is it some kind of mold or mildew, which definitely needs to be investigated to figure out what it is? Is it trash from the commercial property that's right next door to you? That smell-o-vision is not here yet, although I'm actually interested to see, how they do create that and how they can bottle up those smells. And, I want to go there, but people are bottling up smells these days and selling them for a lot of money. So I know we're going to figure that out at some point. But I think, that's, one component of just safety is always going to be, and I think the robot or AI will really help with that and mitigate it. But there's still that human component where, at least for the next, let's just call it 3 to 5 years. I don't want to think about how fast things are evolving. 3 to 5 years, health and safety is, people are at least going to double down on it for a while. They're just not going to fully embrace that the technology's got it. So I think from a smell standpoint, I think of other companies that, have algorithms and automated valuation models, the big giants that are out there. Do we talk about other companies while we're on this?
Hey, this is for you to bring your insight.
Yeah. So such as, let's just use Zillow because it's a big name that everybody uses. But Zillow still doesn't tell me or any clients when there is a convenience store right behind, or a commercial building. There's no economical obsolescence that the computer says, this is a deterrent or this is not. And, in real estate, we're always trying to expose the listings to the greatest audience, because the biggest exposure you can have, the greatest chance of generating the highest return on that investment. So when I think about other functional or economical obsolescence to the properties, I think technology is going to take a little bit more time to catch up to those items, where, people talk about, it's noisy on this road. Well, noisy to who? And how is the technology?
Relative.
Yeah, how is it going to be? And so really having a human that, lives there or knows the area or works with a lot of clients and kind of say, hey, unless suddenly we're going to start installing little noise meters inside the houses and have some barometer or measurement for noise. So going back to the human senses, I guess is what I'm getting to. Smell, taste, listening, touch, all that stuff is going to be the components that I think the AI is going to have a little bit of a lag on. And I think just general, what would you call that? Intuition and gut feeling. And a robot doesn't have a gut yet. It will eventually. It'll have robots with like big guts, just like we have.
Only the middle-aged robots.
Right. Yeah. So, and you'll have the gray-haired robots, and then they'll have wisdom, and we'll figure it out.
Or the no-hair robots, and they say trees don't grow on busy streets.
Exactly. And then they'll also make that no-haired robot will make that's just to make sure everybody also feels good. Like, we have no hair, we have gray hair.
So, Andrew, talk about where was home for you as a kid? Where is home for you now, and how do you define home? And is it different as a kid versus today?
Yeah, so I grew up in Brentwood, Tennessee. And, I grew up in the South, I would say. And in the South, this was also, I drove 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes with no traffic to all the schools that I would go to, because we were that spread out at the time. But my childhood, I just want to say, was fantastic. I mean, I don't think I could have had a better childhood. So for me, home was, besides my bedroom as a kid, where you had, that was the sanctuary. It was limited by hey, this is when I get grounded. This is where I go to play video games while I'm grounded. This is where I go to watch TV while I'm grounded, or this is where I go to sleep or play music or watch my lava lamp go up and down.
Gotta make sure my kids don't hear this, because I don't let them do that when they're grounded.
Well, how much could mom and dad actually control? Now they'll just have a robot that sits by the door and tells on me the whole time, so won't have to worry about it. But I always think about that home for me. It's funny you asked that, because when I think about home as a kid, I think about my bedroom. As a kid, that's pretty much your domain, and as an adult, you have the whole house and the land. That's really this is my square, this is my grass, this is my fence. And you always wonder why Dad got so much good feeling out of cutting his own grass. Well, now I get that, and making sure that the grass wasn't brown and it was green. Why there was such a sense of pride, because that home and that sanctuary grew from just the bedroom into the actual home. But when I also talk about home, when I'm describing hey, what was home like? I don't describe my bedroom to people. I describe, that wherever I went, there were, we lived by all the country music stars. So if I went for a run, I'd be I'm running by Dolly Parton's house, or I'm running by Alan Jackson's house, or Toby Keith needs me to go cut the grass. And so I would, drag the mower behind my Chevy Blazer and go.
Were they truly your neighbors?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know this about you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And tell you more horror stories or war stories. But, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill would drive by when people were at dinner parties, and they were wave. They were part of the family. And so that was also inspirational to probably why I love to write music so much. And because everywhere I was at was songwriters were surrounded. And Kenny Chesney moved in, and ended up getting a job to pressure wash it, his driveway, because that's what we did to make money back then, right before I went to college. So I think of home as, my friends' exterior and my family, and just in general, south of Nashville, that community of friendships and family that I had, and then my bedroom.
Has anyone ever written, or have you ever written a song or a country music song about that neighborhood?
About Raintree Forest?
Or I mean, there's
about that between Raintree Forest, Indian Point, Chenoweth, these places.
all these country music stars basically is in the same community or neighborhood. It seems like they would write about each other with their interactions with one another. No,
I mean, it sounds like there's an opportunity there. I don't recall anybody ever talking about Wilson Pike or Concord Road. I could be wrong. As I moved up here to Northern Virginia area about 18, 19 years ago. So I also have been home and in home part 2 the same amount of time. So am I from, where is home, south of Nashville, or is home Northern Virginia? I have 2 homes right now.
So you no longer define home as your bedroom, part of how you define it, but not only. You now see the whole piece of the real estate as home. Is there anything else the way you define home today, like where you are now, like what makes it feel like home instead of just a house or a piece of real estate?
Good question. So now home for me has evolved. So people always ask, why Northern Virginia? Like, what do you like so much about it? And besides my home, like the actual house, it's a great base camp for people who like to travel. I'm 22 minutes, pouring rain, and even with traffic, I'm probably 24 minutes from 2 international airports. I can hop on a train within 22 minutes and be in New York in 3 hours. I can be in Philly in 2 hours. We can be at 2 or 3 beaches within an hour and a half. And for me, especially being in real estate my whole life, an hour drive that's Monday, so it's no big deal. So we can get to so many other places, and, it's kind of like, owning a house or buying one and renting it for other people. It's like, well, have you really found a mountain house or a lake house or a beach house that you love so much that you don't want to try any other places? And I haven't gotten to that point yet where I want to say, like, this is the mountain house, this is the lake house, this is the beach house. I still like to rent, to travel. And for me, home is that platform, or that, that transportation station, if you will, to go see the world. So
home is a place you're coming from.
Home is a place I'm coming from.
And then you can see the rest of the world from there.
Correct. Well said.
Centered.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about, is there a favorite physical feature of your home?
Favorite physical feature of my home. I call it my square. All right. So if you're in the city or just outside the city, real estate's really expensive. So I love going to one of our Loudoun State properties because these are on 10, 15, 100 acres, and they're beautiful and they're wild. But, in Falls Church, that same house, I get a 1/4 acre. And so I always look out the window and saying, hey, like, this is our square. I love my square. I'm very passionate about my 1/4 acre of land that we have, that we can actually, just enjoy. So, I like having that piece of land and that square because it backs to trees. And as much as I told you, it's like the heart point for all the other arteries to explore the world. When I go out back, and you've been to my house, when I'm sitting in the sunroom or I'm on the back cantilever deck, there's still nothing but huge mature trees that you're looking out of. So I can almost fool myself to be like, oh no, I'm actually out in the countryside, or I'm basically in Costa Rica, so to speak, as long as I don't turn this way. And then clearly I'm in my 1950s Rambler in Falls Church City, and, right across the streets to, the water tower, so to speak.
It's such an interesting, I'm getting this really interested and fascination, if you will, on like the humbleness in which you view your home, but the opportunity of the whole world from it. It's like a really interesting dynamic between the whole world and the square, and the big sphere from the little square.
Yep.
I like that dynamic. Were you a geography guy?
No.
Or a geometry guy, not a geography guy.
No, I would say if you put me in any room, math is my subject, and if you put geometry on the table, I would immediately walk out.
So you think out of the square.
I definitely think out of the square.
So in our relationship in the management of distinctive property management, what aspects are you excited about in our partnership with Distinctive Property Management and where it's going, and where are you hoping it will get to that it's not there yet?
Well, where I'm excited with the relationship is you've really given me an opportunity to scale the business. You know, property management, as I tell many people, I mean, and being that I'm a people, team, partner for performance type of person, you know, I want to be with somebody who is 100% all in, burning the ship. I'm going this direction, and I have no way to get home. And as it comes to property management, you know, you're that guy. All right. And you've made that clear. And we did a bit of a dance for a couple of years trying to figure that out, but that's the truth. You know, it gives me scale because at the end of the day, because I have other businesses or things that I want to do that I'm more passionate about, I need to make sure that all the people that are relying on Distinctive Property Management are knowing that that ship is still being steered and is right on course all the time. And I know you have to sleep, but I also know you have a great team as well. So that's really been the great opportunity for, because we need, you know, just like any business, I mean, we want to serve as many customers with high quality and care that we possibly can. And you fully embody that. And because we're aligned in that regard, it gives me scale to go out and meet more people. You know, as far as I'm concerned, besides the people that I haven't met yet, if people don't know that you exist, you know, it's my job to help them know that you exist. And for that matter, to help them know that I exist. Otherwise, they could be following some kind of other false proxy that's out there, or the best of what's around. And meanwhile, you know, they're hoping and wishing and probably struggling all the time with, if I could just have a property manager that did this, this, and this, and this, and truly know what I needed, that would be my person, or that would be my robot. And, you know, so we got to do a really good job of spending time working on the business and creating marketing and exposure so that people know, like, hey, one, you know, I am not a catch-all. I am not what would you call it? A ready-wear type of brand. I'm a custom tailor. And, you know, that comes with listening. And there's always like two caveats. I know I'm taking a little diatribe here, but there's two differences that come with this. One, I would ask a client, you know, what do you need in a property manager? And they'll either say, I don't know. Like, well, great. Then let's focus on that and defining, you know, what is your win for a property manager? Because I'm pretty lethal on hitting a target that I can see, or at least I have a chance at hitting a target I can see. I like the lethal part more. But, you know, if I can't see it, I'll still be a monkey in the dark throwing at it. But it would be a lot, you know, more useful for everybody's time if they can just paint that picture. So being able to sit with the clients, which I really enjoy, and helping them define what it is that their win, and then seeing if we can be a custom tailor to that. Now, I know that you have every tool in the toolbox, and I know mostly what your tools are. I know that if you don't have it, you have more or less a theoretical 3D printer that you'll go make the tool so that we can serve the client. And or you'll come back and say, you don't actually need a spoon, you need a fork, but well, you know what, let's figure this out on the fly. So sitting with the client, defining, you know, what is their win or what they're actually looking for, or people that really have it defined on what they believe they're looking for, listen with intention to, you know, challenge some of those things to get really clear on it and to make sure that they are heard first and foremost, because I think that's what most clients want to know is that, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to hand this off to you and you're managing it. And I just want to trust that you are, you know, the rock star that I've been praying for. But at the end of the day, that first meeting is really just slowing it down to really making sure that they're heard and that's defined. As I've been telling people of late, you know, everyone's first punch comes with a crow hop, right? So it's like, if I can take the first punch and say that hurt, that's powerful. But then stay in the fight, stay in that conflict enough to really feel number 2 and 3. You know, people get a little bit tired and they'll start to get to the core of what's most important to them. And I think that's the point where I'd rather have that fight and that conflict up front so that we can actually get to know each other from that way. And then, you know, let them know like, hey, that's who we are. And this is who my partner is in property management. Doing those exercises, I could not do that as effectively and, you know, create the marketing exposure to meet more of those people if I was running the operation the whole time. And as romantic as it sounds to be a visionary and an operator, and as special and unique as I may like to think that I can do that, I have now met an operator that has shown me that it is not the most efficient use of my time to do both. So,
well, I have a new aspiration in life. It's to be the rock star you've been praying for in property management.
well, so far you're as close as I've ever found. So,
Andrew, all the talk of real estate with intelligence, we talked a bit about artificial intelligence, we talked about the tech stacks you use, the smart people you work with, even the smells and touches and senses that are important to the human element of addressing real estate. You licensed broker in 5 states and all these different aspects. Tell us a human element of you. Tell us there's something just downright dumb that you've done recently, or maybe like some kind of interesting human trick you might have up your sleeve.
Okay, so one, it's either dumb or awesome. Is that what I'm hearing? But I feel like you really want me to bring some, knock myself down a couple notches here at something that was.
If I'm being really honest, Dumb and Dumber is the most awesome movie there is. So dumb and awesome can be the same thing.
Real estate intelligence with people who do dumb and dumber things. This is quite the exposed podcast you're creating here. All right. So I don't usually just have, I guess I'm not one of those that just keeps a Rolodex of dumb things that I've done handy, ready to fire off. But I know I've probably done a handful of them. I misplace and lose things a lot. I wonder if, I got early states of, some kind of dementia that's coming on a little bit early, but, I usually recover quickly. So I'd like to think that there's something dumb that I have done that had to do with losing something that was right in front of me. But you know what? Everyone is missing their other sock. So I'm not going to tell that story. Let's see. I play music, for fun. And so maybe it probably goes hand in hand with that. And I play music on stage. And
what do you play?
I play the guitar, the bass guitar, the ukulele, and I sing. And the singing part is kind of dumb because, we have a singer and, but I, as an emotional person, like I get really excited about some songs and then I forget that I'm not the singer, but I'll let it out like I am. And like everybody really needs to feel all my emotion and then I'll ruin the song because my Ryan, who's in the band with me, will always kind of look over to me while we're playing. He'll be like, back up a little bit. Like when you scream, don't be right up on the mic. Don't overpower our actual singer in the band. So I get, overly excited. My energy kind of explodes sometimes. And, I could say that's kind of dumb for me to do, but I'm working on that.
So for all of us that don't get to be rock stars on stage, I might get to be a rock star in property management, but to be a rock star on stage and really express yourself in music, like you said, even lose yourself in the moment, excuse the Eminem pun there, but to lose yourself at that opportunity of expression, what does it feel like after that? Or what does it feel like at that moment and after that? Because that's something that most people don't get to experience.
The first thing that comes to mind is that we do this, we used to do a live power hour. And so we do 60 songs in 60 minutes and the song would change about every minute, say every minute and a half. But as of late, we usually, one of our ending songs would be My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark, mashed up with All I Do Is Win by DJ Khaled. Well, so, the whole band is singing, like, I'm not going to sing on this podcast, but, they're doing the harmonies that kind of pumping up for My Songs Know What You Did in the Dark. And I come in as, all I do is win. And I'm screaming this. And it's one of my favorite parts. But I got to say right before my part's coming up, I get a nice wide stance. You talk about energy burst. And I'll get a nice wide stance. And I got to play the bass while I do this. And I'm not a bassist by nature. And when I start singing, I want the crowd to feel it because I want them to also be screaming it. And when it goes to the part where everybody's hands go up, and I always sing with my eyes closed, and I open my eyes just for a second, and everyone in the bar's hands are wide up. And at that point, you more or less, you control the crowd. I can hold them suspended in air for as long as I want, but more so, it's that feeling of where my eyes were closed. I'm screaming, I'm giving it all I got, and everyone is right there with me, and then you bring them down. You're like, and just bring them down. Everybody's hands usually just start going like this. And then I look over at Liam, and there's always a point where I am so lightheaded. So like giving all your energy, and suddenly I'm about to pass out. And that's why I get that wide stance, because it takes me, usually another 30 to 60 seconds from all the blood to come down and me to get more air in me. So I love that part, but it's always my most nerve-wracking part because I want to pass out on stage.
Wow, that is well described. I was feeling it with you a little bit right there too. I almost got my hands up for the podcast, but you didn't finish the song. So
hey. that's right.
I was just sitting here being a silent critic.
Oh, there you go. Appreciate that. It's not so silent now that the crowd knows.
So is there anything else that you'd like to bring perspective to clients that are investing in real estate or that own real estate that you say, have you thought about this? Or would you like them to share an insight that, you gave us insights from being on stage. You gave us insights on how you see home. You gave us insight on artificial intelligence and how it plays with emotional and human intelligence. What's a more simple insight that you would say, hey, if you're buying a home, if you're investing in a real estate property, think about this.
More than location.
Well, I would say my answer to that is negotiation.
There you go. I think, there's really, there's this real estate in general is just a massive, it's not an ocean, it's a universe. There's so many ways to, to create wealth, to create profit. You're usually either an income person or an equity person. I mean, we're all both, but, one of the motivating, drivers for I've found that people are either, hey, I want to psychologically know that I am making income. I get that kind of monthly dividend. And then you have the others that are, they know that they're creating equity and they don't care as long as it's stabilized, in 20, 30 years, that will be, their payout. Simply put, one of my agents in my office, she's been with the office for 42 years. Which I love because she's been selling real estate for 42 years and I wasn't born yet. So I always love listening to her perspective, and she has a very large portfolio of real estate. And I heard some people in the office the other day talking about how the market's been crazy and prices are so much more expensive and they wish they would have bought, 3 or 4 years ago as opposed to sitting on the fence. And she said, you guys in 20 years, you're going to be saying, I wish I would have bought more properties in 2023.
Right.
It wouldn't even have cared.
She's heard that same sentence every year for the last 40 years in real estate, right?
Yeah, and she owns a lot. So I think that it goes back to real estate being a fixed asset. It's not a commodity, and it is stable. And people are, when I always look at, people are like, oh, there's not enough supply, or the builders they're holding back because materials costs are higher, and I don't want to say blah 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 because that's cheesy, but the thing is that the population growth is just growing. That's not stopping. I mean, even if it's slowing, most people need houses. And I'm not talking about, the new movements here that are living in underground train stations or choosing to be homeless. That's a different story. But the population continues to grow. And whether to rent or to own, there is going to always be a need for housing and for shelter. Now, I can see, how architecture and as technology advances, what people define as home, especially if you can have, in the digital age, you can have different screens or floors or even ceilings change, where you never have to leave home to go to Costa Rica because you just wake up and a little mist sprays out and gives some humidity in the air and the temperature goes down, and you have the sound machine that's like so dialed in and perfect, and your screens on the side, show 50 waterfalls. And you've been to Costa Rica, after 5 days, like, want to go see that waterfall? I'm like, you've seen one, you've seen a lot, it's fine. Even though I'd prefer to go do the real thing. So I could see, though, as density continues to increase, an opportunity for people to go back to location for purposes of who wants to connect with their community. And that's going to be, I always like the movie Ready Player One. I think that's a pretty accurate depiction, which, sidebar for a second, does it just ever fascinate you that, so many different movies out there, like Total Recall, Terminator, Ready Player One, is ridiculous as they can be, and comedies are gory. So many of those things I would say are at least possible. Like we might have thought that was sci-fi. It's like, I mean, a lot of people are getting inspiration to do a lot of strange things these days. But I go back to Ready Player One, and you go back to the stacks, and you have people that have defined home now as, or their actual home where they live and report to is no bigger than, this room, this wonderful room, by the way. And then they never actually meet anybody, and there's no communication, there's no connection except for his aunt and his aunt's boyfriend that he couldn't stand, and some of his friends that maybe were running around that weren't getting Amazon drone delivery or whatever it was in the movie, right? Pizza delivery. So
connection.
I think that connection is still going to be, whether we admit it or not, it's still important. It's still going to be valued. And like I said, I think a lot of people will just shove that down and will just choose, maybe safety or more convenience. But it's not going to, I think that primal instinct of humanity, unless we evolve from, apes into humans, then start to devolve into, I don't even know, whatever it is that, we change into from this. But I think at the core, that connection is still going to be very instinctual, and I think beautiful and yearning. I think that we have yearning from birth, and that yearning is just going to get louder and louder. And there will be more people that will create different technologies to deal with the anxiety and with the yearning. And there's a lot of money to be made in that, but I would like to stay on the other side of, like I said, playing for the human, playing for the connection, definitely leverage the technology. Don't resist it, definitely help fight the good fight of stopping the bad guys. I'd vote for playing for the good guys if you can at all costs, but embrace it. Find a way that it works for you. Find a way to make it, to make it home for your tenants, make it home for your short-term tenants, create a wild experience for them while they're there. But at the end of the day, it still goes back to, I guess, location, and whatever you buy today, in 10 years, you're going to wish you bought more.
Cool. We were talking about movies. If there's one movie or TV show character you identify or relate with most, or somebody inspirational, doesn't have to be a real estate tycoon and serial entrepreneur like
it's
you.
Definitely not that. Yeah, it's definitely not that. When I come home, I do not want to watch real estate shows. My brain is, I'm actually more introverted than I probably come across as. So I like when people ask, like, if you could hang out with one celebrity or one famous person, for a night, who would it be?
Right, let's go there.
And I would probably say Russell Brand. I think, he's wildly intelligent. I think he's funny. I think he's a little odd. I think he is himself and he's authentic, albeit I know he has, tons of demons like everybody else, but he would also expose that. I think he'd just be a really cool person to, spend a day with or spend an evening with, hanging out with. I don't know if we'd actually have any worthwhile, but I know that him by himself is a force, and he wouldn't be relying on me to create energy for him. I think he'd be like, I got this.
Oh, I like that dynamic. Yeah. It's not necessarily that you want the interaction with him, it's that you relate with, hey, like I like to bring the same energy and I like to be interesting just like that guy, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and also having somebody else that can contribute and create for themselves that you can be a part of. You don't have to say be the life of the party, but you can sit back and be like, man, like, this person just can't help but to create both, I would say external fun that you can have and, an internal experience too. Because I know he's got a spiritual component to him, which I just find, I'll just say fascinating. Either good or bad, either way. I just think he's exploratory, he's curious, and I think he's funny.
Cool. Well, here we have Andrew Reamer, serial entrepreneur, real estate genius, good human being, good friend, bright future and interesting past, and defines home as his square in the great big sphere of the world.
Well said. Thanks for having me, Tommy. Appreciate it. It's great
Thanks
being
for coming
here.
on.
This podcast is about real estate with intelligence. It is pulling the sword from the stone. This podcast is about that unique balance in real estate, that balance between technological intelligence and our emotional intelligence, and the transactions and interactions with one another in the real estate process. That's why we're inviting expert guests, people who are knowledgeable and bring different perspective. Join me in exploring this fascination, the look behind the scenes of technological advancement and how it's interacting with people's decisions in real estate.